Time to pull up a chair. We've got another great story for you today in the rLounge. In some ways, the hardest part of having a baby is not giving birth or looking after it. It's redrawing all of your relationship boundaries. Today on rLounge, the hardest relationship for new moms? Your mother-in-law. Mother-in-law called the police due to tummy time. I really can't believe it, but my mother-in-law claims my wife, female, and I, male, mid-30s, are abusing our baby, 6-month-old, since he fusses while on his tummy. Our doctor said he needs more tummy time for his flat spot, to strengthen his muscles, as well as to help him roll over. He doesn't like tummy time, but it's not like he even gets to the point of crying. He just makes uncomfortable noises. We tried explaining this to mother-in-law, but she keeps claiming we are forcing the baby and abusing him. Mother-in-law has been living with us the last few months and things have gone great. She graciously agreed to provide free childcare for 3 months. I cooked her dinner, made her lunch, and we bought her groceries. I tried my best to make her feel welcome during her stay. Mother-in-law lives with father-in-law on the West Coast, so we paid for her plane ticket here, East Coast. Father-in-law stayed on the West Coast because my wife does not like him. The latest event happened a week before she was scheduled to fly back home. 2 days ago, she snatched the baby from me during tummy time and said I am committing violence against him. I regretted letting her take him, but let her. Then, yesterday, she tried the same thing and I refused to give her my baby. The thing is, I wasn't even doing tummy time. My baby fusses when he isn't doing something. He just constantly wants something. Mother-in-law heard him fussing from another room and comes barging in, saying I'm abusing him again. I walked away from her and locked the door behind me. She pounded on the door saying she will call the cops, and she did. I called my partner, who left work immediately, and drove home. 2 policemen talked to her and then us. I invited them in and said they could walk around. They looked around and saw an immaculately clean place and a very happy baby. Mother-in-law had not been cleaning up the past couple of days or helping with anything like she did in the past, making me think this was premeditated to try and make us look bad. But I had been cleaning behind her. Mother-in-law tried telling the cops that we were dirty because the dirty bottles and snot suckers were in the same place, that we pet the dog then hold the baby, and that we do tummy time where the cat lays on the couch. When she told them that tummy time hurts the baby, they just said, "I'm not a professional doctor." The police couldn't contain their laughter, saying it sounds like mother-in-law thinks she is the resident expert, and that they run into mothers who disagree with parenting styles a lot. I unfortunately couldn't laugh along because I was in tears explaining the situation, but it was obvious the police were on our side. The police told us the clean house does not look like an unsafe environment for the baby. They also informed us that at this point they were just there for a venting session with mother-in-law and not to worry. Of course, no police report was filed. My wife had my back the whole time and kicked her mom, mother-in-law, out of our house. She had a couple hours to pack her bags, and then I drove her to a motel. She of course was mad but had no remorse and thinks she did nothing wrong. She doesn't have much money, so my partner and I are paying for it. We got her a flight home tomorrow. She was scheduled to fly out in a week, but we were able to change her flight for tomorrow. I'm not sure what will happen in the future, but it might be the last time mother-in-law sees her grandchild. Mother-in-law has no idea and thinks it's her baby too. Luckily, mother-in-law and father-in-law live on the other side of the country. Here's to hoping they never move here. Let's have a look at some relevant comments. Here's some of OP's responses to a comment regarding speculating dementia. I think it is related to PTSD from father-in-law's domestic violence when she was raising her own kids. My wife was the youngest and didn't get abused as bad as her siblings and mother-in-law. Mother-in-law claimed that I get angry and take it out on the baby by hurting him through tummy time. This sounds like projection to me. I have a counselor just to talk generally about life things and don't bottle up any anger like mother-in-law says. Every time mother-in-law hears the baby fussing from another room, she automatically assumes we are doing tummy time, even though the baby was just fussing. My guess is something is triggering her own abuse. She never got counseling, is very against it. I definitely don't think it's dementia, while she seemed to be seeing red trying to get the baby from me, and I've never seen her like that. It seemed like something else. Another note from the OP. Brother-in-law lives with mother-in-law and father-in-law, and brother-in-law says 100% it can't be dementia, so we can rule that out. OP's response to the comment claiming there must have been warning signs. I was trying to keep the post brief for the sake of talking about the major situation, so mother-in-law has made comments, but my wife has shut her down. Like she didn't like that his pediatrician is young. She doesn't trust doctors in general, especially not young ones. She blames him having to do tummy time on the fact that we chose a young pediatrician who doesn't know anything. She doesn't trust the skin treatment method the pediatrician chose for a rash. She doesn't like that we don't give him water. Water can kill newborn babies. But my partner just shuts her down immediately. Maybe things were just building up since she never got her way and then it all came out. but I wouldn't say there were any arguments. It was just more little comments she made. Edit. She also hated the white noise machine and even told the police about it. The officer stayed professional, but you could tell he was holding back laughing. She also hated that we laid him down on the couch where the cat had laid down, and she said that was dirty. The officer just kept saying, "Well, I'm not an expert." The officer told my wife and I that he would have a venting session with mother-in-law because there was clearly no child abuse occurring. About partner and all of this and why they didn't drive, why not get her an Uber? My wife said that things would have gotten heated between them, so I drove. To be honest, I didn't even think about an Uber. Not sure why. It was an awkward ride. I recorded the entire ride because I didn't want her to lie about anything. We wanted her out immediately, and as soon as she got in the car, I was driving her away. To be honest, I didn't think she would leave without a fight, but she did. Just didn't think about the Uber, or maybe we didn't want to wait for an Uber. Hard to say in that moment. Another comment to clarify tummy time fussing. He has never cried during the tummy time sessions. He makes grunting noises, but when he starts that, I move his hips and help him roll over to his back where he is happy. The physical therapist taught us how to rotisserize to help him learn how to roll over, since he still can't do that on his own. Wow. The fact that she might have PTSD seems to make the most sense. It certainly would explain why she gets triggered by his fussiness. Although her behavior is inexcusable, I think it's definitely coming from whatever she claims to have gone through in the past. I mean, the fact that your wife doesn't even like him and he didn't come to see the baby says it all. It's funny because people seem to know it all and have it all figured out when it comes to babies. Everyone seems to know the right way, and they are eager to tell you what you're doing wrong when it comes to your own child. Update post April 5th, 2023, 4 days later. An hour or so after I dropped mother-in-law off at the motel, both my partner and I got texts from father-in-law, and I quote, "You can't leave my wife in a hotel. I demand you guys take her back to your house now and work out any problems or misunderstandings. If something happens to her, you're going to be responsible." And then later, he argued that we didn't explain tummy time well enough to her and said, "You guys are not geniuses and need to be empathetic." My wife immediately blocked him, but I didn't know until we discussed it later. I tried reasoning with father-in-law, but realized it wasn't happening, so I blocked him too. The next day, the motel said I can't pay by phone, so I had to drive to the motel to pay for one more night. This was Saturday and mother-in-law's flight was Sunday. I also decided to bring mother-in-law some snacks. She requested water, but I decided some snacks too. Listen, y'all, I don't know why. It was a bad area of town and I thought her walking to the gas station could be dangerous. But if it makes you feel better, while she was living with us, she bought some frozen taquitos that she told me I could eat because she didn't like them. They really weren't good. Had some unidentifiable ground chicken. Also, the Wednesday of that week, mother-in-law and I had bought good chicken taquitos from Costco. Anyways, to be petty, I put the ones she didn't like in the snack package for her. When I dropped off the care package, mother-in-law pleaded that she wasn't really going to call Child Protective Services. I forgot to add in the original, she did threaten this. She didn't offer an apology, but wanted me to tell my partner that she wasn't really going to call CPS. I said, "All right," and left. Mother-in-law then called my partner, and I thought was going to apologize, but didn't. Instead, mother-in-law started guilt-tripping, saying she thought she wasn't treated well at our wedding a couple years ago. What? Somehow didn't mention it until now? And other random things. My partner hung up on her. Note: I think I had forgotten to mention that earlier that week, mother-in-law told my partner that us forcing tummy time was equal to how father-in-law abused her and her children. That really pissed off my partner, who had to witness the physical violence of father-in-law growing up, and says that mother-in-law did nothing then. I'm not saying the abuse is mother-in-law's fault, but my partner says it's hypocritical and effed up of mother-in-law to make the comparison of us and our baby. So Sunday came. I picked up mother-in-law and took her to the airport. On the way, I asked her if she was planning on apologizing. She said, "To who?" I said, "Both of us." She then started saying how we didn't explain tummy time well enough and that it's our fault. So then I decided to say what I had planned. I said that this whole situation was her fault, that she put us in danger by calling the police, and that threatening to call CPS ensured she would never see her grandchild again. I told her she is not welcome in our house in the future, and if I see her again anywhere near our house, then I would call the police for trespassing. I also told her she was a bad person, which I kind of regret. Mother-in-law had tears in her eyes. I was shaking and hastily dropped off her bags for her. As I started driving away, I heard a tap on the glass. I nearly drove away with one of her bags in the back seat. So, as she picked up her last bag, I called out again that she would never see her grandchild again and drove away angrily. She is presumably back with father-in-law on the other side of the country. I really can't say I feel better. The rest of the day I felt just sad in general, and I'm not sure why. I haven't felt like cooking even though I cook most days, so we ordered Chinese. It's been a couple days now and I'm feeling slightly better. just replaying the car conversation and wishing I said even more by shaming her for guilt-tripping my partner so much. I've gotten my neighbors to help with the baby and my partner, and I found a new restaurant to try. Anyways, I did speak with my partner and we agreed both mother-in-law and father-in-law are blocked. So they are both officially blocked, on Facebook too, which is the only social media they use. We haven't heard from them, but it has only been a couple of days. They probably think we are overreacting and that we will come around, but I don't think we will. My partner's brother is getting married in September, so we might have to see mother-in-law and father-in-law there. Thanks for all the support. I like responding to you all's comments, and it feels good to be validated in my decision. Many people said they would not have bought the hotel and plane ride for her, but I think mother-in-law is on food stamps and quite poor. Also, she did give us childcare a few days a week for 3 months, so I am thankful for that. She saved us quite a lot of money. Lastly, she was technically a tenant, so she didn't have to leave even though it is our house. I don't know the exact tenant laws, but they vary by state here in the US. I think we did the right thing to pay for the hotel and airplane, and I still think it's funny I gave her the taquitos. There's a comment warning about the grandparents' rights. In the OP's response, I can't understand her end goal here. I think when I closed the door and locked it behind her, she saw red and called the cops. I don't think she was trying to gain custody of my kid. Luckily, it is hard to get grandparent visitation rights in my state. Mother-in-law absolutely cannot afford a lawyer. Lives on the opposite coast. She would have to take us to court, and if my wife or siblings testify about domestic violence in the home and get a police record of cops being called to their home, domestic violence due to father-in-law, it would be nearly impossible for them to even get visitation rights. You did the right thing by getting her out of the house and away from you and your family. She seems a little unstable, and having that sort of thing around a baby isn't good for anyone. Her behavior is unpredictable. You never know what she would try to do with your baby. She was doing far more harm than good. And calling CPS is no joke. You certainly don't want a can of worms opened up like that if you don't need to. Update number 2, October 8th, 2023, here, 6 months later. Hello all. 6 months ago, my mother-in-law called the police because my wife and I gave my baby tummy time. In the update, I mentioned that brother-in-law, wife's brother, was getting married in September, which meant that my wife and I would be forced to see mother-in-law again. The wedding happened, and here's what happened. The wedding was on the other side of the world, in the Middle East, since brother-in-law's now wife is from there. My wife, son, and I live in the US, East Coast. My wife went to the wedding being that it is her brother, but we decided that it would be difficult to take a baby on 3 flights and who knows how long of travel time to get there, so I stayed home with the baby. While I did want to go just to see the country and enjoy the wedding, part of me was happy not to have to see mother-in-law. Due to finances, mother-in-law and father-in-law claimed they could not afford the plane ticket or a hotel. They do live in an unsafe, I don't know how to say this in a PC way, part of LA, in a very small apartment, so I'm inclined to believe them. So my wife, brother-in-law, and sister-in-law all chipped in for the plane ticket, and my wife and mother-in-law shared a hotel room. And I know what you're thinking, was there really no other option? It was just easier and more affordable not to get 2 rooms, I guess. A couple of days in, my wife texted me. My mom apologized to me, and she wants to apologize to you, which I interpreted as my wife accepting the apology, which confused me. My wife FaceTimed me, and we talked briefly, and she said her mom wants to apologize to me. Her mom then walked over to say hello and presumably to apologize, but I said, I gotta go, and ended the call. I just felt like I needed a game plan before talking to mother-in-law. I also didn't know what to apologize meant to mother-in-law, because there is apologizing, and then there is accountability. So I texted my wife the following. Tell mother-in-law to write down a list of all the reasons she thinks she was wrong, then sign and date it, and mail it to me. I will review it and decide if it looks like she took responsibility. If she's not willing to, then I will not feel safe with her seeing our baby again. To my surprise, her mom agreed to this. My plan was to have written proof of her admitting to being wrong, which I thought would be great. But to be honest, I still don't want her to see us again, and I'm not ready to forgive her even with a letter. I didn't hear much else about the trip. The wedding went well, my wife enjoyed sightseeing, and my wife flew home. My wife wanted to talk about what happened with mother-in-law's apology at the wedding. It was not what I thought. I thought her mom apologized and my wife accepted the apology. What actually happened was that my wife went off on her mom, calling her out on many things, telling her she permanently ruined their relationship, how it was horrible that she made accusations of abuse when that's what father-in-law put them through, etc. Her mom continued making excuses for her behavior, or saying, well, that is in the past and I can't change that now, whenever she didn't have a good response to my wife's assertion. Her mom basically just apologized once, but never said specifics or owned up to any of the specific grievances my wife brought up. What was really interesting is that mother-in-law claimed that when she, mother-in-law, was a child, her cousin came running into her house and her uncle came banging on the front door looking for said cousin, and cousin was hiding. She says that traumatized her, and that might be why she thought we were abusing our baby? My wife says that is complete BS, and that father-in-law's domestic violence is the cause of her trauma. But she just doesn't want to admit it because they are still together. Mother-in-law also claims that my wife shouldn't be upset because father-in-law only physically abused her brother and sister. My wife countered by saying that she literally just gave a situation where she only witnessed something, and that affects her to this day. But again, mother-in-law just brushed it off. So after a week or two go by, her mom sends me an email. This is a direct quote. "I'm sorry for what happened. On those days, as you said, I felt very tired. I hope that with time, everything will be in the past." To be clear, my wife assured me that she's laid out the terms very clearly, that she must write a list of everything she did wrong. She also gave mother-in-law specifics of what I wanted her to take responsibility for, basically writing the list for her. My wife and I, of course, were not happy with the email. I don't even remember saying that mother-in-law was tired. No idea where that came from. Also, sorry for what happened? She makes it seem like we had a disagreement and both are at fault. My wife made sure to ask about how I felt about it, which was nice, and I let her know it wasn't what I was looking for and it doesn't take responsibility. My wife says she is upset for me and that she was not happy about it. After another long conversation, we decided to keep her parents blocked on everything. This time I also blocked mother-in-law's email address in addition to everything else. Last thing, brother-in-law is now mad at mother-in-law and father-in-law. My wife says her parents sent a WhatsApp message to my wife and her siblings, and it says they are in Europe going around visiting places. So brother-in-law, whose relationship with father-in-law was already shaky, and my wife were upset that they said they couldn't afford to come to his wedding, especially since they all chipped in for mother-in-law's plane ticket. Now, suddenly they flew to Europe and are traveling around just a couple of weeks after the wedding? The WhatsApp message also wanted to know brother-in-law's wife's aunt's information so they could ask to stay with her in Europe, which my brother-in-law says he is not happy about. Brother-in-law also says the English they used is too good to be his mom, so he suspects it is father-in-law that actually wrote the message. In my opinion, this is getting into a bit of the stretch of theory. Brother-in-law and my wife think father-in-law made the trip in part to somehow get back at brother-in-law, get under his skin. Anyways, that's it. I don't really see mother-in-law and father-in-law changing or taking responsibility, so I'm done waiting. They had their chance. My wife and I's son will grow up with just one set of grandparents on my side. My dad goes around joking that he ate dessert, that's child abuse, or there are 2 toys left on the ground, that's child abuse, or whatever else it may be. Classic dad. I am still upset that my son will only have one set of grandparents, but I myself had only one as well, so I guess you just live with what you got. Wow, she's literally incapable of apologizing and taking responsibility. It's like she's saying anything and everything other than what actually happened. It seems like she's very much blocking out what happened. You're right to maintain no contact. She's got a lot to sort out on her own. I think it's best to have grandparents who are of sound mind around, meaning I'm not sure you'd want anybody like your mother-in-law and father-in-law in your child's life, especially with the accusations of abuse. As you said, they had their chance. What do you think? Thank you for following along today. Before you go, be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you have something you want to share regarding today's content, we want to hear it. See you next time on rLounge.